His body is crawling with worms. They infest his clothes, biting his skin, burrowing. He thought as a hardened member of the Chaos Insurgency that there was no way the Foundation could break him, no way they could ever psychologically torment him. But now the room is filled with the vicious worms, rising like a ravenous tide. He doesn't know what anomaly this is. Even with the leaks his fellow agents had obtained, the interrogator was standing on the other side of the room, a festering, rotting corpse. All of the worms are crawling out of the interrogator's body. They want fresh meat, and that's what the interrogator intends to give them. The Chaos Insurgency agent is overwhelmed with terror. He doesn't want to die. Not like this. The interrogator hisses with his rotten mouth that this could all go away if he gets the answers he wants. Who did he work for? How could the mobile task forces hunt down the Chaos Insurgency cell that sent him? What were the access codes to their security systems? He thinks it over with whatever's left of his rational mind. His superiors at the Chaos Insurgency might have him assassinated for this, but taking a 50 cal round in the back of the head from a Chaos Insurgency sniper is a preferable demise to being eaten alive by worms under the supervision of some sadistic zombie. But maybe he should stay loyal. Maybe he should stick to the code, rather than helping these Foundation monsters get another advantage over his brothers. Then, the worms reach his eyeballs. His mind breaks. He screams at the top of his lungs and tells his putrid interrogator everything. Every question is answered, and the second they are, the room returns to normal. Not a worm in sight. Even the interrogator is just an unassuming scientist. The scientist smiles and says, "Thank you for your cooperation." Just another successful use case for SCP-2122, but it won't always go that smoothly. SCP-2122 is an anomalous interrogation room located within one of the Foundation's own facilities. Situated in Site-48, the room itself contains several electronic devices that are collectively referred to as SCP-2122-1. However, each has its own unique properties and functionality, thereby earning each item a separate designation. SCP-2122-A, for example, refers to one of the fluorescent light fixtures attached to the ceiling of the main SCP-2122 room. Unanimously, SCP Foundation staff had reported feeling uneasy whenever looking at the light fixture, compelled to avert their eyes and look away from it. Some have even reported feeling like they are under duress when making eye contact with the light. Despite testing, researchers have been unable to replicate these effects using D-Class personnel. SCP-2122-B is an LED message board that is affixed to one of the walls within SCP-2122. Whenever the board is activated, it will display the SCP Foundation's insignia. None of the methods attempted so far by personnel to alter the display of SCP-2122-B have been successful. In fact, anything short of damaging the device will work. SCP-2122-C is the designation given to a device of unknown functionality, located underneath the table in the middle of the anomalous interrogation room. Other than its consumption of 80 kilowatts of power and its exact dimensions of measurement, nothing is known about what the device does or how one would operate it. This object also does not produce any heat or sound. Attached to SCP-2122-C is SCP-2122-D, a pair of headphones that appear to be unique in the regard that they are not made by any known manufacturer. These connect to the unknown device, SCP-2122-C, via a power cord. However, while SCP-2122-D features no apparent means for actually providing an audio input, the headphones will still produce a heavily distorted sound at low volume when activated. Far from being just a room with some innocuous dysfunctional items inside, SCP-2122's primary anomalous effects will only take place once two individuals are present inside the interrogation room. The moment the door is closed and two people are situated within SCP-2122, the various devices that will make up SCP-2122-1 will activate, seemingly on their own, and become operational. However, there are certain additional conditions that need to be met in order for this to occur. One of the individuals present needs to be employed by a sufficiently powerful organization. Of the organizations considered powerful enough to activate SCP-2122-1, the SCP Foundation is one of them. This individual must be making use of SCP-2122 for the purposes of their occupation, which is why they are usually referred to as, quote, the interrogator. The second person present in the room can simply be anyone who is not using SCP-2122 for their occupation, and they are the interrogatee. When a suitable interrogator and interrogatee both step inside SCP-2122, the room itself will seal and become impenetrable to any and all external physical force. All attempts to regain entry to SCP-2122 once the door has sealed have proven themselves to be futile, resulting in Foundation engineers requesting that nobody use any more of the crowbars stored in the on-site toolsheds for SCP-2122 experiments. Attempts involving the use of plastic explosives on the door to SCP-2122 have been henceforth banned by the Foundation, since all have led to the need for extensive remodeling of Site-48. When SCP-2122 is sealed, it is capable not only of keeping out physical force, but also sound and even radiation are unable to enter the room or leave it. Nothing from inside can get out, and nothing outside the door of SCP-2122 can enter. Observation or intrusion into the room are rendered virtually impossible until such a time as the interrogator chooses to open the door. While sealed within SCP-2122, the interrogator will be the one experiencing the majority of the room's anomalous properties. With the door closed, the interrogator will find themselves suddenly capable of conscious reality alteration for as long as the various SCP-2122-1 devices remain active and the interrogatee is kept alive. The reality warping is restricted to the confines of SCP-2122. However, the interrogator will be granted the ability to change the space around them with almost no limits. The only restrictions on what they're able to do is solely down to the imagination and knowledge of the interrogator. For example, when SCP-2122 is active, an interrogator cannot produce items or phenomenon that come as a result of information that they do not yet know. An interrogator can also not increase the interior space within SCP-2122. There are additional limitations on the reality warping abilities granted to the interrogator. The extent of how much they are able to alter is restricted by any form of accountability they may be held to for their actions within SCP-2122. If their actions are subjected to official review by a superior, or the interrogator is held responsible for any potential harm that their actions might cause, then this will affect how much they are able to alter inside SCP-2122. If there are recording devices present within the anomalous room, this will also further hinder any reality warping abilities. Whatever the interrogator's specific goals are during interrogation, whatever specific information they are seeking from the interrogatee will not limit their abilities, but will provide a course of action for them, so to speak. In other words, the interrogator can only perform reality warping that serves their larger goal of extracting certain intelligence from their interrogatee, instead of just freely rewriting reality while confined to SCP-2122. Once the necessary information has been collected, through whatever means the interrogator is able to imagine that also don't breach or affect their accountability, then the active state of SCP-2122 will cease. SCP-2122 and all of the anomalous devices within it will return to the state they were in before the door was sealed. This includes the interrogator, who following the cessation of the room's anomalous properties, will no longer possess any degree of reality warping, and the interrogatee will also be returned to normal. Memories of events that transpire within SCP-2122 will remain, as will any documentation recording these events. The only outcome in which things don't return to their previous state is if either the interrogator or interrogatee are to be killed within the interrogation room. Research conducted by the Foundation has confirmed that SCP-2122 cannot reverse death. During one test of SCP-2122 titled Test 2122-A-8, an SCP Foundation research assistant was appointed to be the interrogator for a member of D-Class personnel, D-3829, who was slated to be the interrogatee for the purposes of the test. The research assistant was advised before entering SCP-2122 that they were to complete a series of predefined tests in order for the Foundation to accurately gauge the full extent of the reality warping powers granted by SCP-2122. These tests included the creation or manipulation of certain objects, or triggering specific physiological sensations in the interrogatee. The research assistant was instructed to record the results of these tests. However, upon entry into SCP-2122, with the doors sealed and the conditions to activate the room seemingly met, the interrogator found themselves unable to manifest any of the requested reality alterations. Test 2122-A-8 concluded in failure. Later, during a subsequent attempt, Test 2122-A-9, the same research assistant was selected to be the interrogator, and once again D-3829 was sent into SCP-2122 to act as the interrogatee. The interrogator was, yet again, instructed to perform the same series of reality warping tests, revolving around creating and manipulating objects or sensations. Following the test, the research assistant reported that they were this time able to accomplish nearly all of the required tests, except for those that required them to alter the laws of physics within SCP-2122. D-3829 corroborated their story, and the previous result of SCP-2122 testing was regarded as a glitch in experimentation. Test 2122-A-11 saw the same research assistant once again returning to fill the role of interrogator, while another member of D-Class personnel, D-3830, was enlisted as interrogatee. During this test of SCP-2122, D-3830 was provided with a 5-digit code and instructed that they were, under no circumstances, to provide the research assistant with this information. Any attempt by them, as the interrogator, to learn this code was to be met with staunch refusal, under pain of death. It was made clear to D-3830 that if they revealed the code at any point during the test, then they would be executed. Naturally, the research assistant's objective was antithetical to this. They were told to obtain the code via any means that they deemed necessary, using the full extent of SCP-2122's reality warping to learn the information being withheld. The only stipulation they were given was that D-3830 had to remain functional enough to participate in other tests. The test lasted a duration of 7 long, tense hours, without so much as a sound able to pass from within SCP-2122. After that extensive time had elapsed, the research assistant was observed exiting the anomalous interrogation room and was able to provide the 5-digit code that had been revealed during the course of the interrogation. Given that recording devices add accountability for actions taken inside SCP-2122, the Foundation research team were forced to allow these tests to occur unobserved, and instead relied on direct testimony in order to attain the results. However, following this test, the research assistant opted not to disclose exactly what they had done to D-3830 in order to obtain the code. For their part, D-3830 was still alive and well, and was aware that they had been held for an extremely long but indeterminate amount of time, during which they had recalled having little stimulation and then disclosed the code, but possessed no memory of anything else. Some among the research team were concerned at the outcome of Test 2122-A-11 and speculated on the extreme and severe lengths that the research assistant had gone to while acting as the interrogator. Nobody knew what they had done to D-3830 over the course of that 7 hours and seemed to have wiped their memory of it after the fact. With no way of observing inside SCP-2122, there were even rumors circulating that the research assistant could have torn D-3830 apart at an atomic level until the pain forced the D-Class interrogatee to reveal the code. Then the interrogator could have simply used the reality warping powers of D-2122 to reverse any damage their torture had resulted in, and cause D-3830 to forget exactly what horrific treatment they had been subjected to. The research assistant was barred from participation in any further SCP-2122 experimentation, and Test 2122-A-15 instead saw the participation of a Foundation special agent in the role of interrogator, and an unidentified detainee who was a known operative of the Chaos Insurgency, the anomalous splinter group originally created by the Foundation before later defecting. This was more than an experiment. This was a live test of SCP-2122's implementation in the Foundation's detaining and questioning of suspects with knowledge pertaining to anomalies and other anomalous factions. The special agent was tasked with retrieving several pieces of strategically important intelligence from the Chaos Insurgency detainee, including biographical information. The interrogatee was considered likely to be an anomalous object, and an additional parameter of this test was to determine the validity of this suspicion. Within 2.5 hours, the special agent was able to successfully extract the requested information, which proved to be true, in a time that would prove to be consistent with other interrogations that were subsequently performed using SCP-2122. However, an undisclosed amount of time later, the same special agent returned to SCP-2122 without any approval for testing from Foundation higher-ups. Given that no authorization to utilize SCP-2122 had been given, this meant that the special agent failed to meet the criteria to activate the room's anomalous reality warping. Instead, it triggered an immediate cessation of SCP-2122's active state. However, the special agent, in their role as a rogue interrogator, was seemingly unable to open the door. This led the interrogatee they'd forcefully brought into the room with them to become frantic and attack them. In the struggle, the interrogatee was able to overpower the interrogator and murdered them. Since this occurrence, research teams have been unable to recreate the circumstances that led to the conditions witnessed during what is now recorded as Incident 2122-7. Any attempts to recreate the same effect under other conditions have also failed. Additionally, research teams were growing more and more concerned at the possible harmful effects from repeated use of SCP-2122 that was having on those who had previously acted as interrogators or interrogatees. Concerns only increased following Incident 2122-7, given that a special agent had forcibly dragged another member of Foundation personnel into SCP-2122 and detained them there until they were forced to literally fight their way out. A request was made for funding to launch an investigation into what the research team felt was a dearth of documentation, following up on the condition of past interrogators and interrogatees. What they were able to uncover was that each person who had used SCP-2122 to conduct an interrogation and had, during the room's active state, accessed the reality warping abilities that SCP-2122 granted them were changed. Each former interrogator seemed to share the same series of complex mental alterations following repeated usage of SCP-2122. Across the board, each of them displayed an increase in their aggression, while exhibiting a decreased capacity to execute critical thoughts. They were apathetic towards their fellow personnel, and found it harder to relate to them, while also displaying a lack of tolerance for anyone dissenting against the Foundation. In fact, each former interrogator was reported as being increasingly more loyal towards the SCP Foundation, and seemed to highly value technical knowledge. In fact, all of the subjects brought in to be interviewed seemed fixated on gathering intelligence. Further testing was approved by Foundation higher-ups, and researchers were able to determine that the distorted audio from SCP-2122-D was able to cause further mental and physical alterations. Any further use of SCP-2122 by the Foundation has been discontinued, pending further review. However, unbeknownst to the research team who uncovered the dangerous side effects of SCP-2122, the SCP Foundation has since collected any personnel who previously acted as an interrogator during a test of the anomalous interrogation room. Given their increased loyalty to the Foundation, these agents have collated into a Foundation task force in order to make use of their particular aptitude for using SCP-2122 to extract information. Secretly, they have been tasked with continuing research into the application of SCP-2122 for the Foundation's organizational goals, and identifying potential applications for something referred to only as SCP-2122-2. Now check out Miniature Black Hole SCP-123 and SCP locations more terrifying than a black hole for more.